Big dreams and ambitious concepts can make a 2D music project popular, but quite frequently, the money invested in each project ends up determining which projects stay up and remain active and which disappear from the public eye. But there is much more to it. It's time for you and me to unveil the secrets to success in 2D music projects. Let's kick off this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is small budget, big dreams. The secrets to success in 2D music projects. This is an episode based on a comment by Grecia on episode 96 of SEIYUU Lounge. Part of the comment read as follows. Also, even if it was only mentioned briefly in the episode, the topic about budgets is so interesting to me. For example, knowing the Dear Vocalist franchise has a modest budget took me by surprise. A part of me thought it would be like that because it focuses on rock music and the drama CDs are not for everyone, so even if it's popular in Japan, I still consider it kinda niche. But knowing that is now part of Reject's trademark projects, it surprises me it's still like that. I can't imagine how many other projects are in a similar position, being popular in their own public, but it's still not enough to get big budgets. Smaller labels really have it hard in comparison to the big ones. So in this episode, let's talk about big and small budgets for 2D music projects, what those mean, what those influence, and a couple of examples of each for you to understand the difference between a project having a big or a small budget. Let's start talking about this topic. Big and small budgets, a tailor-made choice. You and I have discussed quite extensively on SEIYUU Lounge's episodes that 2D music projects can have big budgets and big casts and a marketing machine behind them as a result. But you also have smaller projects that barely get noticed because they are working with very little money to begin with. The truth is, when creating a project, its creators have to get a budget for it to be approved. Launching a project is not cheap by any means, so the initial budget will certainly go into the launch of the project, and most of the times, 2D music projects will be in debt for quite some time until they start making money to cover their losses. Launching a project with a small budget is a way to contain costs and, if with luck, quickly cover those soon after launching the project. There is less risk apparently when launching a project with a smaller budget, but it comes with its problems. Now, when a 2D music project launches with a big budget, for example a project tied to a major music label or publisher, the risk of failure is still there, but given how much money is invested into those projects just to launch them, it is far more difficult to make that money back quickly. How do budgets influence a 2D music project? Let's imagine two different 2D music projects. We are going to invent them. One has a small budget, for example 100k euros or dollars, and is created or supported by a small niche publisher. On the other hand, we have a 2D music project with a big budget, for example $1 million or euros, and it is created or supported by a major music label. Which costs do we have with a 2D music project? I've talked about those on episode 152, but let me sum them up for you. You have to pay for the character's creation and story, the character's art, the music rights if purchasing songs from a licensor, or pay music composers, lyricists, mixing and mastering engineers for their work. You have to pay for the production or distribution of the music, the SEIYUU for voicing the characters and singing as them, and let's not forget all the marketing from the social media account content, even down to offline promotions. This is a lot to pay up front, without fans even knowing the project exists. When the project comes to light and is announced to us all, the company behind it already paid for all of that. And depending on the budget, those 2D music projects I just created, for the sake of explaining all of these, will have different approaches. Let's see. Imagine that each SEIYUU asks for 10k for singing and voicing their character per year. We're talking about 10,000 euros or dollars. This is not usually how it works, SEIYUU do not specify a price per character and not even per year. They specify it per words or even per activities. But let's imagine it works like this. A SEIYUU asks for 10k for singing and voicing that character for a year. You can't go all out with filling your cast with stars, and you can't as well create a massive cast with more than 4 SEIYUU. Otherwise, you can't pay for all other costs. So this project will spend 40k on the voice cast alone. 4 unknown or rookie SEIYUU, each asking for 10k for a year of work on the project. You are left with 60k to spend on everything else. If you're not aware, artists, digital designers or even character designers are not that well paid in Japan. So let's imagine that the character art, as well as the rights to use it in merchandise, is paid by the project right off the bat, with no bonuses or percentages of sales given to the artist. You spend 10k in art. So now you have 50k already spent on voice cast and art. You need to pay as well for the storytelling in the franchise. Are you going to focus on an overarching story that spreads over various CDs like THTFHQ Pro does? Or are you going to keep the story to a bare minimum as Visual Karma does? Well, given that we saved a bit by keeping the voice cast up to only 4 voice actors, we can spend a little bit more in the story. So let's bring here a 15k budget for the story, including 2 seasons of content for drama CDs, story bits for social media, and story videos that are shared on this project's YouTube channel. You are paying more because you want a really well fleshed out story with characters that go way beyond their archetypes or cliches. So, with voice acting, character designs and story, you've already spent 65k out of a 100k budget. And there is still a lot to pay. Now, there is the music. And this is where most 2D music projects end up not focusing, and thus you get the most generic music out there. One song can cost from 50 euros or dollars up to 20,000 euros or dollars, depending on the studio it was recorded, who was the composer, producer, mixing engineer, and many other factors. Let's assume each song costs around 500 euros or dollars with rights included. We want to release 3 CDs in the first season of content for the group, each with 2 songs. It can even be digital singles. Each song is 500 euros in this example, so you have 6 songs per 3k euros. These aren't necessarily state-of-the-art songs in terms of mixing, but they do the trick. If you want songs that sound good in its mixing and mastering, it will be twice as much. That's 71k out of 100k spent. A good option to counter those costs is to always have the same composer working on all music. Then you have to pay to distribute the music. It can be relatively cheap if you use an online indie publisher, but it is still a cost to have into account. But that only guarantees that your ownership rights are protected online and will put your music online on streaming platforms and some online stores. On the other hand, if you go through a music label that is also a distributor, you get access to more places where to sell the music, but you will have to spend more money on making the music available in such places. Music rights are a bit of a mess to talk about in this short episode. You can check some of the previous episodes of SEIYUU Lounge for more on that. Let's say distribution in various stores will be 4K. And like this, you only have 15K left to spend on this project. Marketing arrives as the pre- and post-launch essential for a 2D music project. It is with a well-thought social media strategy to tease characters, introduce bits of the story and more that the costs can get pretty expensive. You will have to pay someone to create that strategy and someone to execute it, which is to say you need a social media manager or a community manager in there to be paid every month. The project will run for a full year, the first season of CD, so you have to pay that social media manager 12K at least for their work for that year. And just like that, you've spent 98K out of 100K. You only have 2K left. And you still didn't do any offline marketing, and you need it. You need to have stands inside the music or anime stores for people to be drawn into checking the project out. You have to pay for media coverage of your project. So what do you usually do as a small project with just 2K left to spend? You focus on the online part of marketing. You will pay for Anime Times, Pesh, Bizlog and other magazines to cover your project or just share the press release you created to announce its launch. And that will be 2K or more depending on how much each magazine asks to share your press release. This is a 100K 2D music project. It gets a small cast with relatively unknown SEIYUU. It focuses more on the online aspects of marketing, and the music may have a varying quality level. Now let's go mad with power and money with a project with a 1 million budget or more. We're talking about projects like Uta no Prince Sama, Idolish 7 or Hypnosis Mic. I can imagine those projects having a much bigger budget though. You and I are going to bring some really popular SEIYUU into this fake 2D music project and have at least 2 groups in it to start. So we need to at least 10 SEIYUU for this cast. And I really want to bring in Takuya Eguchi, Yumu Uchida, Soma Saito, Makoto Furukawa, Shota Aoi, Toshiki Masuda, Toshiyuki Toyonaga, Shoichiba, Jin Ogasawara and Takuya Sato to this project. Well, if you noticed, there are a lot of SEIYUU in this cast that for sure are ranked C or above in the SEIYUU ranking system. Please listen or watch episode 8 for a detailed talk about what each ranking earns and some examples. Eguchi, Saito, Uchida, Toyonaga and Furukawa for sure are SEIYUU ranked B or above. They are really near the top. They are extremely well known and are in multiple 2D music projects, most of them extremely successful. So let's imagine that this cast of 10 SEIYUU will cost me 250K. We are talking about 250,000 euros or dollars. There are some SEIYUU in here that usually charge more than 30K to be in 2D music projects, so this can get quite expensive really fast. 250K spent on the voice cast that will be singing and acting as their characters. Speaking of this, if we have a big project, we will want to launch it with a live event or something of the sort. SEIYUU usually ask around 10K per appearance in 1-hour events. Add more 100K to that bill. That's 350K out of 1 million just spent on the star-studded cast, ensuring they appear live just to sell some tickets to watch a special part or even pay to attend an in-person launch event. Maybe we can get 10K in tickets for that event. So we have spent 340k so far. The character designs should be done by someone with an easily identifiable art style, perhaps being an artist that is well known. In this case, I want, because I love this artist, I want Yana Toboso, the mangaka of Black Butler, to draw the art for this project. Well, Toboso sensei is well known, the art won't come cheap. We are talking about the characters, at least 3 different outfits for merchandise, CD covers design, even down to ensuring you own the rights to everything Toboso sensei will draw for this project. This is something around 100k in character art just for one season. The good thing is you've purchased 3 outfit designs per character, so you get to use that art past the first season of CDs, so maybe you will be saving money down the line. With the art costs into consideration, you already spent 440k on this project. Now you have the story. Honestly, I'll keep the story with Toboso sensei as well because I love how dark and rich the stories can be. So I will commission the story as well to Toboso sensei. So I want the stories for each character to be interesting and well developed, with empty spaces for fans to fill in for themselves, but also some twists and turns in the overarching narrative of each group and then each character. This is expensive. It is almost like thinking about writing for a game, a novel, or manga. Add at least 160k for the first season of the story, and you have 600k spent. When it comes to the music, you will create your own team of composers, one unique to each group, and then work with the same mixing and mastering engineers. This team can provide you with unique, exclusive music with a high production value. Add more 100k to this. Then you have to pay for the music distribution. You will want to release at least 2 CDs per group in the first season. Those will be available physically with serial code slips inside for fans to vote for something. Adding those code slips will ensure your project sells a lot because fans want to have their say in the story or the music that is released. You will also have the music distributed online via streaming or online music stores, and then go offline to ensure that there is a billboard or outdoor in Akihabara or Shinjuku about the project, and that all the animate stores in Japan will have their special stands just to highlight the project. We are talking about at least 200k. That's 800k spent out of 1 million. Last but not least, you have to promote the project in magazines beyond sharing a press release. You will want to put the faces and voices of the SEIYUU you hired to basically appear. And making a SEIYUU appear for an interview is, let me tell you, quite expensive. In its earlier stages, a project will pay to promote itself. But when it gets to a point in which it is already popular, it is the other way around. The magazines pay the project for an exclusive or an interview with a specific SEIYUU. In this case, the project is new, and as such, despite having a big and popular cast, as well as amazing art from a renowned mangaka, this is still not enough to draw attention to it. I want someone, or everyone basically, to know about this project. So I will be paying around 1,000 euros or dollars per short interview feature on several well-known magazines. Depending on the SEIYUU appearing in those magazines, let's imagine to appear on the cover of SEIYUU Grand Prix and have a 10-page interview, I will be paying around 10 to 20k, and that's because the SEIYUU in the cast usually charge around 5 to 10k per interview. So if I have my project appearing in 10 magazines, I will be making a 100k investment in interviews alone. That's 900k spent so far. So I only have 100k left, and online marketing is also left. So we need a dedicated project manager, a social media strategist, and a content creator, plus a content designer, as well as a community manager. Those are 5 different jobs that will ensure that we have relevant content all the time, that we make fans more invested in the story, and that we can tease fans and play around with them from time to time with content premieres. These 5 people will be paid around 100k in total for a year. And that's a 1 million project for you. So the cast can have superstars, in this case with a big budget, and have higher ranked SEIYUU. You can have your music team that will ensure no other project of the same type gets to work with them. The quality of the music production will be certainly higher. Your project will be known by everyone on social media and even traditional media. Your voice cast will be the face of the project. You will be creating a big community around it from the get-go. This project has the most and best chances to be succeeded, but the risks are higher if it flops. $1 million of investment is a lot of money. Examples of 2D music projects with massive budgets. I've already mentioned that projects like Uta no Prince Sama, Idolish 7 and Hypnosis Mic have massive budgets. But the truth is, they didn't start with those big budgets. At least Uta no Prince Sama and Idolish 7 didn't. Uta no Prince Sama's first live event was at a small live house, in which fans in the back could clearly see who was on stage. Right now, they sell out arenas with 80,000 people. The cast is filled with stars, and even back then, most of them were already superstars, and they were working with the renowned Elements Garden composition team and were releasing music under a big music label, King Records. But they started really small, especially with how it was still unusual for 2D music projects to turn into 2.5D ones in which SEIYUU performed live as the characters they voiced. This project ended up experiencing humble beginnings up until superstardom because of how early on it kicked off its activities. When this project started, the budget wasn't necessarily small, but it was far from being as massive as it is now, spending ridiculous amounts of money on 3D CGI movies and live shows. Idolish 7 didn't have a small budget when it started, but it certainly wasn't a big one. Most of the cast features veterans, and at the time of its launch, a couple of relatively unknown SEIYUU, especially in 2D music projects, such as Atsushi Abe, Soma Saito, Takuya Sato, Toshiki Masuda, Tsubasa Yonaga, and Yusuke Shirai. Of course, as time passed, these members have gotten more popular and thus more expensive for the project. But at the same time, the project naturally grew, exploding in popularity in 2017. That enabled the project to hold its first live show already in an arena instead of starting small. The project has grown into a money-making machine with its game, music, live shows and anime selling incredibly well. All to the point that the franchise now has its own 3D CGI live shows going on in Japan. Hypnosis Mic is definitely a project that kicked off with a massive budget to begin with. Under King Records' Evil Line Records, the franchise already kicked off with some expectation behind it. King Records is the music label that is behind the music in the Utapri franchise. For sure, the next thing they launch is going to be a hit. The cast is big and filled with stars, so there was anticipation this was going to be massive. It was going to be instantly popular. Well, when Hypnosis Mic launched in September 2017, that was not really the case. Having a unique concept and exploring a music genre that had never been explored before, the project found itself struggling a lot, even holding its first talk shows in really small venues and only with the cast members that at that time were either veterans or not that well known, all to keep the costs with live appearances to a bare minimum. Those struggles ended around March 2018 a time in which there was a clear push by its creators to market the project to no end. And it worked. Despite its troubled start, the project quickly turned into a million seller, has held over 8 sold-out live shows, and features various crews that every year release 1 or 2 CDs, and has a 3D CGI live performances and stage plays going on. So Uta no Prince Sama and Idolish 7 started with humble budgets, nothing too low, but also not too big or big to begin with. Their growth over the years has enabled them to grow the budget and do bigger things. Out of the 3 I mentioned, Hypnosis Mic was the only one that started with a massive budget. And as you can see, it wasn't necessarily an advantage for the project to start off investing a lot of money when they could have predicted it would take a bit of time or some time until fans really got into the project. Right now, the franchise is one of the most successful and best-selling ones, having an even more massive budget than when it started. Examples of 2D music projects with small budgets. Really small budgets are noticeable in projects such as Gamb Doll, Perfection Noise, or Ready Project. These are projects that either focused too much on their cast and little on the story, Perfection Noise, focused too much in its music and less on its story, Gamb Doll, or simply add too many things they wanted to do but there was no real focus on anything and everything went down the drain, which is the case of Ready Project. Don't get me wrong, projects with small or modest budgets can become successful. Look at Hannah Doll, Dig Rock, Carnelian Blood, and Dear Vocalist. They started really small, with very few cast members, and interestingly enough, putting more focus on the story and music than on the cast itself. For example, Dear Vocalist launched with a cast that at that time only had one superstar SEIYUU, Toshiyuki Toyonaga. The music is all composed by Hon and the focus is on storytelling tied up with music. The project never was too big on offline marketing, they for sure are not really active online as well. What carries this project forward and thus took it from a really small project into a medium-sized one is the storytelling. The stories make listeners want to come for more, and then the music is amazing, so all the more reason for fans to be loyal to the project and follow it devotedly. While not a sales monster, this is a project that managed to find its niche, focused on doing 2 things really well, and put all the fanfare aside. Then, the same can be said about Carnelian Blood, which is also by Reject. In this case, the focus is slightly different. The stories, while present basically, are not necessarily the main selling point. People follow the project because of its seamless transition from the 2D characters to the SEIYUU performing live. The music is quite high quality as well, but niche. They found their niche and it has led to the project being quite consistent in its sales. Dig Rock kicked off with a medium-sized budget. The cast is filled with stars, there's a focus both on music and the story, and both are really well done, although the story doesn't go as deep and basically detailed as, for example, Dear Vocalist goes. Hannah Doll has also a medium-sized budget. The cast has well-known SEIYUU, but only one of them is considered a star, which is a bit nicer on the budget expenses. There are 2 groups and the focus is on presenting unique music and storytelling, basically all in the same place. Of course, the focus went on those, but I feel like this project was the best one so far, having a perfect balance between a solid cast, music, and storytelling. As it got a bit more popular, the project managed to hold live shows and will be getting its own anime adaptation. So, it is possible for small and medium-sized 2D music projects to be successful or even get to places where big budget projects usually get with ease. Which are the best projects, the ones with big or small budgets? This is the eternal question that many may ask when it comes to comparing projects. Honestly, none of them are the best. It will really depend on your tastes and your focus. Are you the type that loves a good story? Perhaps you can find good stories in both big and small budget 2D music projects. Are you a fan of high-quality music when it comes to its production? Then you can find that both in small and big budget projects. It is really down to checking all music projects, listening to their music, see if the story sparks an interest in you, or even if it feels right for you as a whole. So there is no right answer to this question. The secret to success is not only the budget. The secret to success is good timing, launching when no other project is, avoiding times in which big music projects are kicking off new CD releases. It's also in its focus being really good at one or two things like the storytelling or music and marketing only those. Then you get to be successful or have a project become successful because of the quality of its music. Focusing on delivering a good production value makes a difference. Then you have the storytelling. It can be a deal breaker for some fans and is more than ever something required for 2D music projects to justify their continuity. And then you need, and this one I believe it is really important, it's a harmonious cast. Most of the times, a star-studded cast is only that, a collection of stars. Most successful projects didn't focus on making it basically all about the stars, but about bringing together a cast that will fit ridiculously well with the project and with each other. But ultimately, what or who makes a project successful is you. If you support a project, you can be helping it survive. If you are not, you can be helping it come to an end. You are the secret to a 2D music project's success. Although most people will assume the best projects are the ones that are the most popular, that is not really the case most of the times. Essentially, what makes a project popular is the marketing behind it. And of course, there are a lot of other factors, but mainly the marketing. Marketing attracts eyes and ears to a project, and that's why projects with a bigger budget, or at the same time big music labels behind them, always or almost always get popular. Some even extremely popular. But good music, engaging storylines, and characters with depth, you can find those more frequently in lower budgeted projects. And that's because knowing that they have little money to spare in publicity and marketing that makes it so that their project is everywhere you look, they focus on making the story, characters and even the music shine on their own. They put the utmost care onto those hoping to bring in fans of quality instead of hype. Not to say that popular projects can't have or do not have quality, but 1 out of every 3 is just a rehash in terms of sound, units, and their styles, even down to the music or characters' traits. So that doesn't bode well for the variety and excitement that higher budget projects can bring to the spotlight. And that is how projects like Dig Rock, Versus Ambivalence, or Dear Vocalist end up having more depth and making more sense than many of the massively popular 2D music projects. Now tell me, what do you find fascinating about big budget projects? On the other side, what do you think makes smaller budgeted 2D music projects shine to you? Let me know in the comments on YouTube, and remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of SEIYUU Lounge. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the hand that feeds HQ's weekly mail SEIYUU and music-related content, hit the subscribe button. And if you are listening to this episode on a podcast listening platform, please consider following the podcast and leaving a review. Leaving a review is really simple and helps other people find this podcast and fall in love with male SEIYUU artists and 2D groups. I'll return next week with another episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Thank you for listening, and see you guys around.